Hey guys, thanks for joining me today. Today we're going to be building and doing some lighting on the old Buck Rogers Starfighter from Monogram. Now this kit, I did a review I think last year when I first purchased this. As you can see, the box was all beat up and in bad shape. It was open. Uh, the copyright is 1979, so it's something like 42 years old, I guess. So it's a pretty old kit. I've already kind of started messing around with it. I do want to do some lighting on this one. I have a resin kit that I bought and put together already. I believe I did a video on that. But with this one, we're going to try to do some lighting and may attempt to kind of redo the interior. Now, again, I've already opened and started this, so some of the parts are out of it right now. The only part that the kit was missing when I first got it was one of these. As you can see right here, this goes in the engine, kind of the engine nozzle, little detail, and it was missing that one. I don't know what happened to it, but it's gone. But I'm not even using that part because I do intend on doing some engine lighting, and that would just block the lighting. That piece goes right in the middle of there. So I'll be taking some clear plastic styrene that I've kind of cut in a circle to replace that part. That will go in this, you have this little groove right here that'll fit inside there, and that'll be glued in place, and that'll enable us to light that and have some light diffusion. So we'll get to that later on. Just talking about the kit itself, it's for its age, it's not too bad. It has both some panel lines, some inset panel lines, and also some raised detail panel lines. So it's kind of a mix of both. It's a shame they couldn't do the inset ones all over. But it's got some nice panel lines and some nice detail to it. This one, I think the resin kit, this was actually a separate part. This is actually attached to the upper part of the ship or hull, whatever it is. So plenty of room for engine lighting, a little bit more crowded when it comes to the cockpit area. Now they give you this cockpit area, and I did buy this little resin Buck Rogers off eBay, and just looking at it, it just doesn't look good, and I don't want to use it. And it also looks terribly out of scale. He just looks huge for this ship. It just doesn't seem, it's not done very well. So my plan is to either try to build and replace this whole section and make it smaller scale. I'm not sure of the exact scale. I'm guessing something like a 1/35 or something along those lines, maybe 1/48. I don't know. But changing the scale, making the seat smaller. I may not even have a pilot, and just doing something a little bit more detailed. But there's not a lot of room. It's very narrow in here to do all that, but there is some. So I'm going to attempt to kind of build that out and change the interior. Now, if that doesn't work out and I'm not happy with it, what I'm going to do is we have the clear canopy, and this one has some scratches on it. You can kind of see in here. I'm going to try to polish those out, maybe put a clear, what is it, the floor polish method where you dip it and see if I can get rid of those scratches. But if it doesn't work out with the cockpit, and I just don't like it, I may just paint the inside of this black and just cover that up. I'd rather have, instead of putting this ugly seating there, which kind of takes away from it, I'd rather this look black inside. And then just have some engine lighting. So, but I'm going to attempt to redo that cockpit. And of course we'll have some work on the body. Well, we're going to have some nasty seam lines here. But other than these kind of these parts right here, I think everything else will come together pretty nicely. I've already attached the little downward fins that come off of it, and just two parts, and I glued them together, so I got to clean up the edges on those. Not a whole lot of parts other than that. You have engines are two-part. You have a back plate, more likely to light the engines. This is the back section that goes, it goes back in this section of the ship. Probably what I'll do is I'll just mount some flickering LEDs right here. The engines kind of connect over in kind of this fashion right here, and so that will light up our engines. Other than that, there's one other kind of piece that attaches along here, and that's pretty much it. So not a whole lot of pieces. But I do need to work on. I'm not going to be using this display stand. Obviously, I'm going to have probably something just so I can house a battery and an on-off switch. So that's the plan right now, and I'm trying to print out some parts for the interior, some seats. I did find on Thingiverse a file of this fighter, and it had some interior parts, and I'm trying to print those out and see if I can incorporate them in this build. So I'm just going to get started at and see if we can get that cockpit worked out. Alright, I'm working on the cockpit here, and instead of doing a total scratch build, what I decided to do is modify the existing seat and cockpit area. As you can see, I've already done it. What I did is I basically kind of sliced away level the seat, and if you recall, the seat kind of had this kind of baby seat, child seat looking to it, kind of dipped in, and I cut that off. I cut away a section of the bottom of the seat and then glued it on back in a more kind of traditional upright position, and that left this whole area open up here. And then I cut away the existing instrument panel. Now I 3D printed this instrument panel. This is to a Buck Rogers Starfighter. I don't know how accurate it is, and it's been modified itself. As you can see, I've added holes, put some holes in it for lighting purposes, and right now there's just some sprue in there just to cover those. I'm going to pop those out when I go to paint it, but that will diffuse the light. And so, but it's going to be kind of a two-part process to the cockpit here. As you can see on the bottom, I'm having kind of the floorboard with the control stick and some foot pedals. A lot of this won't be very visible. Now this attaches to the top of the Starfighter, and so it'll come down and fit over something on that, and that'll give us a sense of depth in there and make it look as though there's actually leg room for a pilot to sit in a more traditional kind of way. So some of that won't be visible. I'll probably add a little bit more detail on these side panels here, but it's just the only way I could kind of come up, kind of the easiest way, probably not the only way, but the easiest way to give a sense of depth and a more realistic look to that cockpit. I think it'll look much better once we get some primer and paint on it. And I'm going to be adding some lighting, not a whole lot, but just a few to give some of this instrument panels. And I'm going to be putting some of these SMDs in there, very small, and they'll fit right up into these holes that I've spliced in to this control panel. And then I'll use some of this different color sprue that I've shaped to fit in those holes to add some color to it. So I'm kind of liking how that looks. I think it's a kind of a simple fix, easy modification to give it a little better look to that cockpit. So I'm going to go ahead and probably add a little bit more detail, and then I'll be painting up these areas of the ship. Alright, making some progress here. You can see where I've got the seat of the cockpit all painted up, and you can see some fiber optics running out there. Now I'm also going to be adding in some SMDs, and I have 3 of them wired up. I have a resistor in line before it goes out, and I'll be installing those 3 inside these different panels right here. So I'll have some brighter lights and then some fiber optics. I've painted it up and it's pretty good to go. On the top section of our fighter here, I went ahead and glued in the canopy glass. Now I did make a little goof here, as I forgot to paint the inside of this. I wasn't really thinking about it showing, but when you look through the glass, you are going to be able to see that kind of beige color. Not too worried about it. This will install in there. It'll mostly be dark, and you'll have a little beige trim, so it'll just be part of the ship. I don't feel like trying to rip that glass out and risk breaking that glass. So, and this has got some canopy glue in there holding that glass in. It'll be extra supported. This fits inside that canopy glass like that, and then we'll be gluing that inside there. I'll have to run my LEDs for the fiber optics in here. I have my engines wired up with some blue flickering lights. This 3mm, so they're good to go. And I attach them. I have my engines base coat on. I might do some detailing with some like dry pastels, kind of darken up some of the engines, give it that kind of warm, blasted look. You can see our clear part in there where our light will diffuse at the end of the nozzle there. So those are good to go. This is my support rod. I'm making a place for that. I've glued in some more plastic to just for some more support around that area and on the rod. When I attach the rod, I'll use some two-part epoxy to lock that into place. So everything else is pretty good to go. Looks like I'm not going to have a pilot. I just haven't been able to find something that looks good. It just looks weird with that one pilot I had, and I think I'm just going to go with no pilot on it. Otherwise, I'm pretty happy with how that canopy's coming along. I think when the lighting, when we get it lit, we'll have some nice little lights going on inside there. So, pretty close to sealing it up and working on getting it all painted. Alright, as you can see, I got the body all together. I've been doing a lot of sanding, trying to level out some of these ridges back here. It was kind of level on one part and then kind of stepped over here, so just trying to balance that out. Same on the back end, working on these seams right here. Pretty bad right in here. I did kind of scribe in a new panel line because I removed some raised panel lines over here. You can tell I've taped, masked off the canopy, and so I'm going to put some primer on and kind of see where we're at. I'm going to leave the wings off for now, so if I need to, oops, sorry about that. If I need to do some more sanding in here, those wings won't be in the way. And of course the engines will be off, so I need to tape over these LEDs. Primer helps show me where I'm at and what work I need to do. Alright, after a lot of body work, I think I'm ready to add my base coat in. A lot of work sanding and getting rid of these lips around this whole back end around here. Ended up kind of sanding it down just to make the sides look similar. The part, it was kind of, this back plate was kind of flush on here, but then stepped over here, so to get them both equal, ended up just doing a lot of sanding. But a lot of sanding all throughout. We had some seam lines that kind of ran all the way down the sides of the bodies. Not too bad on the wings. Wings are pretty easy to clean up, other than kind of these sides in here. Same for the bottom. Pretty hefty lip that I actually took my hobby knife and chummed away a lot of it just to get to the point where I could sand it. Not too visible in there, but these are probably the worst, getting those cleaned up. So pretty happy with that. I think the primer is all nice and good and ready. Of course, I saw the wings off. And I think when I go to the base coat, I think I'm going to try using this USAAF light gray from Vallejo Air. It's kind of a light white with a tint of beige in it, which is, I think, pretty close to the practical model. You had the full-size mock-up and the practical model, and there were some differences in them. So just researching, it's kind of doing your own thing a little bit. So, but I don't want to go too beigey. I want it more that white color. So I'm going to do this first, and if it's a little too dark, I may come in and do some highlights with a lighter white color. I'm going to see how that looks first. My engines are mostly done, and I did, of course, they were painted with black first. I did a black coat on them, mostly for light blocking since there's a light inside there. Then I did a coat of this zinc from Deco Art, and just watered that down and used my airbrush to spray it on. Now you may notice some blue tints in there. I took some transparent blue from Monomaster and airbrushed kind of around the nozzle, kind of giving that discolorization from heat, and I also did it around these vents. And I also did some shading with some black dry pastels, kind of around these recess areas. And so the end result I'm pretty happy with. I think that it gives them color variation and still maintains that kind of metallized look. And these do have some clear satin coats, so they're clad in varnish on them. So I'm going to get this painted up on a base coat, and we'll see how that turns out. Alright, I've applied my base coat on using this Vallejo Model Air USAAF light gray 71.296. Pretty happy with how that came out. I'm going to move on to doing my panels. Oh, but after I applied this base coat on, I also went back and airbrushed on some of this Vallejo satin varnish to kind of protect the paint from future weathering and from the masking tape where I'm going to be masking off all these panels. So I'm just going to move into trying to get all these panels painted up now. All right, I've did most of my masking work and painting the detail on the panels. As you can see, there's a couple different colors going on here. Actually, there's three. We have some gray for the main body panels. A few of the smaller panels, I have some darker grays for some of the ends of the wings. A little bit on the bottom here, just enough to give a little bit of character on the bottom. I did also add in some white gray from Vallejo, just to give a little bit of color modulation there. So from here, I think I'm going to go ahead and finish up the model. What's left is I need to put the decals on. I'm going to clear coat it, and then I'm going to do some weathering, mostly with probably dry pastels, and finish it all off and get it put together. So when I come back, we'll look at the finished Starfighter. All right, well, here is our finished Monogram Buck Rogers Starfighter. Overall, I'm really happy with how it came out. Right now, it's just on a temporary base. In the future, I'd like to do a more detailed base with maybe some kind of artwork, Buck Rogers on there. But for now, that's just what's attached to, so I can display it and not take up a lot of space. To finish up the model, I did a little bit of a pen wash with this Mecha Collection light gray wash, and just took a paintbrush, a fine tip paintbrush, and got it in all the lines, let it dry, and then wiped off the excess with a little water and cotton swab. This is a water-based wash here. I didn't just cover it all. I was just going for all the panel lines. Some of the colors I use, of course, I use the USAAF light gray. I used the Mecha Collection Gray Z for the gray panels. I used Mecha Collection White Gray for the white color panels. After everything was painted and did all my weathering, I used some dry pastels for some of the vents and around the engines. I applied a Mecha Collection matte varnish to it all. I did add in a few little extra decals on here. Now the kit decals that came with it, I did manage to get those on. It was a little tricky. I had to it was hard getting them off without soaking warm water for quite a while. They still didn't come off the paper. I ended up kind of gently peeling them away and placing them on. Fortunately, they didn't break apart on me. And I had to use some Microsol decal solution because they were wanting to curl up once I did get them off. And it just took several solutions to get them laid down. But once they laid down, they actually turned out not too bad. This one had a little bit of damage, but nothing major on it. Like I said, I added a couple of extra little decals just for give it a little bit of visual interest on there. And of course, we have our lighting. Pretty happy with how that came out. You know, one of my lights isn't very bright in one of the panels, but overall, I think it gives a nice representation of what was on the show. Of course, we have our blue flickering engine lights, and all that's being powered by a 9-volt battery. And in the background, I have this resin Starfighter that I built in a while back. There's a video on that if you want to check that out. It's basically, they molded it off this model. It's pretty much exact detail. The mold has lost some of the finer raised detail, but overall, it looks about the same. This model's gotten very expensive. The plastic Monogram model, you know, one in a sealed box is, you know, several hundred, $200 or $300, even more. I've seen this price has gone crazy for this model. Hopefully, they'll repop it and reissue it sometime in the near future, because I think a lot of people are still interested in this model. And but if you're not, you can find these garage kit resin ones a bit cheaper. I think I found this one for $60 or $70. This one was in a messed up box, and I still paid, I think, close to $100 for that. And good luck trying to find something like that anymore. I really lucked out finding this one. Glad to have it in my collection. You know, out of this, the show wasn't all that great. When you look back, it doesn't really, you know, hold up to time very well. But the ship itself is very cool. That's probably the coolest thing kind of that series is the Starfighter. And I think it was called the Thunder Fighter, but most people just know it as the Buck Rogers Starfighter. So anyway, guys, I hope you've enjoyed the video and hope you enjoyed the model. Until next time, everybody have a good one.